Welcome back, everyone, to the European VC podcast. Today, I have my good friend Marius Istrate from the Romanian Tech Angels organization and also former chief people officer at UiPath. Today, we're talking all about the success of the Romanian Tech Angel ecosystem and why they have been able to unlock growth in the region in the way they have. And I'm really diving in with Marius on the key factors that I think and he thinks that stands out when it comes to the Romanian tech ecosystem, because I think there's something there for every angel organization out there to learn from. I really hope you'll enjoy this episode as much as I did doing it.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.
This show is not investment advice, and the hosts of this episode may be invested in the funds and companies featured.
Marius, welcome to the European VC podcast.
Hi, Andreas. Thank you so much for having me.
Not the first time, but the first time only you. You've been on a panel once or twice. We've done some panels as well in Bucharest at Bogdan's beautiful conference, How to Web. So great to finally have you on the podcast.
Great to be here, and thank you for the invite.
Of course, anytime, man. We're talking because you published a great piece on the how you're seeing that we need to have Romania, and I think really any ecosystem in Europe have big ambitions when it comes to creating unicorns. But before we go there, let me just introduce you to the audience so they know who exactly we're talking with here, and you can then add a bit of context to that because I'm just going to drop the big stats. You are Marius Istrate. You are the chairman of the board of Tech Angels Romania, which is, I think I can say that, Romania's largest and most successful tech angel club. You've invested 45 million euros over 11 years. And you have also invested into more than 300 startups in Romania and the broader region for the last 11 years. So here we can really see why it's so important that we have these spin out tech angels in the ecosystem. And you're of course in Romania, and so is Tech Angels, and you're focused at pre-seed and seed, 80% Romania, 20% the broader CE region. Your vertical is agnostic, but your members tend to have a preference for Enterprise B2B, SaaS, DeepTech, and HealthTech. And notable investments are FlowX.ai, FintechOS, Druid.AI, Creatopy, Colossyan, and Pythagora.ai. And are those, so here there's a mix of stuff that's you and such stuff that's the network. These notable investments in the end, are they in the network or are they yours specifically?
No, they're in the network. So the examples mentioned there are in the network. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously we're going to talk a little bit about UiPath, but not much because it's a well-written story and there's so much going on now in Tech Angels Romania and just the core topic of this conversation. But I would love to ask you to just add a bit of meat to the bone that I said here. Tell us about Tech Angels and the whole vision behind the ecosystem.
Of course. So yeah, Tech Angels has been around for 11 and a half years by now. It was founded in 2013 by the first, let's say, entrepreneurs, investors who managed to have some exits in Romania. So it's Radu Georgescu, who is currently the chairman of the board at SeedBlank. It's Andrei Pitiș, who's currently the CEO and co-founder of Genesio, and Bogdan Iordache, whom you mentioned as, he was the founder of How to Web, but he's currently running Underline Ventures. So the three of them are the founders of Tech Angels. For a number of years, it was a smaller organization. It was more a group of friends, I think, than anything else. And it remains a group of friends, with the difference being that today there are 140 members compared to the dozen or so people who were there in the early years. To give everyone a bit of context about what Tech Angels is today and what kind of opportunities we have access to. Back in 2013 or 2014, when there were pitching events organized so that the angels could see startups and decide to invest in them, I know the founders of Tech Angels and people in the ecosystem really struggled to get 6 or 7 startups per year to pitch in one single event. Today, we have weekly pitching sessions where we see 3 or 4 startups, and every year we see anywhere between 100 and 120 startups that that get into the pitching sessions out of 300 plus applicants to via the Tech Angels platform for selecting the deals. So that there's a huge difference in scale. Now, it's still not enough to achieve the kind of ambitious goals that we've set for ourselves, but it's definitely at least one order of magnitude. I think you'd agree.
And Marius, when you say we, and I'm going to dig a bit into how Tech Angels operate, because I'm always super fascinated by how angel clubs operate, because it's so radically different from one club to another. So when you say that we see 3 to 4 deals per week in a meeting context, so to say, in a pitching context, is that you and the chairman or the board, or is that the whole group
Everyone.
that meet up?
It's everyone.
It's done virtually or in person?
It's done via Zoom because a lot of our members are from the diaspora, so they're either foreigners or Romanian. And all of the sessions are online, except for a quarterly session where we invite, so we do once per quarter, we do a live session in Bucharest typically, where we invite startups who are already invested by our members, but who maybe have a little bit of allocation left in their round. So to sort of convince some investors in person for the last mile, if you wish, to complete their round. But except for these 4 quarterly sessions that we have live, all of the others take place virtually. They are online. And when I say we, I mean all of the members who wish to participate, because they're open to all 140 members. In reality, somewhere between 25 and 40 will attend live. And many of our members will watch the pitches afterwards, so they get access to the recordings and they can choose to engage with the startup.
I'm just asking some of the big questions that I see angel clubs being different on. How do you run the deal sourcing? Is that individual members that see a deal that they like and they then bring to the core team, or is it directly via the website? How does this deal flow happen?
All of the above. So we're using a platform to manage the opportunities. Obviously, there's an integration with our website where startups can simply apply for financing. No questions asked. They don't need to have the support of one of our members. But what does happen, and maybe this will respond to one of the earlier questions that you have, is of course we have members, or not necessarily members in the leadership or the board of Tech Angels, but simple members who are excited about a startup. They will invite that startup to apply and support them when they pitch. But both are possible. So there's no support of a member is not needed in order to get to a pitching session at Tech Angels, because in any case, we ask everyone to apply to go through our official deal flow. And in any case, our members are going to vote on whether or not they want to see a startup in pitching session.
Yeah, so you have a process where a startup comes in, and then there's a voting process before they are allowed to come on for the Zoom meeting. And then after that, the decision making is obviously on the individual.
Yes.
Do you help structure the syndicates from the investment process from Tech Angels side, or how do you do that?
So Tech Angels is not in any way helping with the due diligence or the decision-making process. We provide, however, a database of information for what the individual angels want to achieve. So if for a startup the members need to syndicate, then we have a catalog of options on how they can syndicate, what it's going to cost them, and what kind of option that is. Because there are syndication options that are trusts, there are others that are LLCs in various countries. So we provide that information for our members, but we don't have a default mode that we encourage them to take, but rather to make that decision around the syndication, also to make it an informed decision for them.
Okay, now I then have a question around who the members are, because it's notable that Tech Angels, being the largest angel club in Romania, is also actually a real tech angel club, meaning that it springs out of tech entrepreneurs that then decide to build this, where oftentimes these organizations are a bit not the core people in the tech ecosystem. You oftentimes see that you have a business angel network that is more consistent of the SME owners, lawyers, accountants, that type of thing. And then you have the actual tech angels, so to say, those that are exited entrepreneurs, those that, like you, have been CXOs, chief people officer in in your situation, that have done incredible things, and their deals tend to happen then only between them, but they don't go into a formal network. But it feels to me like that is actually what happens in Romania, because the core people of the ecosystem are the ones that created this organization. Is that correct?
That is correct. This being said, people, whether they come from technology or not, have a different level of involvement at different stages in their lives. I think one thing that we have to demystify, sorry, around this involvement of people in the tech ecosystem is this: like, oh, a company went public, then I assume that everyone who was with that company or is involved in that company will start giving back. And I think that expectation is wrong, because people have different priorities in their lives and at different moments. However, I do feel that it is important for people at some point to give back in one shape or another. I think it's easier to do so when you're part of a network, and I think this is one area where the former chairman of Tech Angels, Marius Stefanescu, did a brilliant job, because he managed to gradually bring people into the organization who have had success with other companies, not just UiPath, and to build that trust, that we can work together, we can do deals together, we can complement each other's knowledge with what we've experienced. What I'm trying to do right now is to continue to make that inclusive, of course, but also realistic. So I don't believe Tech Angels should be the UiPath mafia group. We have a different one for that, by the way.
That's what I've
Yeah, we have informal, ways to gather and to spend time together, if that's what we want to do. But yeah, I do believe it's easier for us as former executives in technology companies, again, not just UiPath, to belong to belong to a group and to do business together and to build trust together.
But it is super notable that it happens in a more structured format, where you actually have a website and those type of things, and also where the people that do not come necessarily from tech are welcomed in.
Of
And I
course.
think it's so important, and I think it's probably one of the key pillars or characteristics of the Romanian tech angel ecosystem, that is behind the growth and the success of the ecosystem. Because it's so bad when you have an angel community that's significant in size and capital, but where the quality or sophistication or the understanding of the way the venture works is limited, because that then skews a bunch of startups in the wrong directions. And we're seeing that in many ecosystems. So I'm super sorry that we have this bifurcation in the formal networks and the informal networks. I'd love to see them more come together. Do you talk to other ecosystems? Like, do
A
you ever
lot.
get reached out to by others saying, "How have you guys done it? How did you manage to get the tech ecosystem involved?"
Yeah, a lot. I mean, we're members of both EBAN, which is the
Yeah,
European Business Angel Network, and BAE, Business Angels Europe. Actually, Molin, the former chairman of Tech Angels, is now a board member with BAE. So we're connected at an European level, and we're trying to cultivate strong relationships with, at least with people in our proximity. So the angel networks and or angel clubs or angel funds that exist in Bulgaria, Moldova. I think the angels and the funds in Hungary, Croatia, Slovenia. A little bit. Our playground and our interest zone is mainly east of Vienna, south of Budapest, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
So that's kind of the box that where we operate, and we do keep close tabs with the players, not just the angel networks, also the funds in this region. There are different ways to go about things. What I will note, however, is I think Bulgaria, Hungary, especially, they have an advantage in terms of the venture capital firms' life cycle compared to Romania. They've started more funds and they've started them earlier. We have an advantage, I feel, from the point of view of the angel networks. So I use the plural because it's not just Tech Angels, because
Yeah.
we've just been around for longer as an angel as an angel group, for better or for worse. I mean, we haven't been, consistently active throughout the 11 years. I mean, we've always made investments, but the volumes have varied. But as always with this game, you have to be in the game if you want to learn.
I think it's so important, and it just cannot be understated how important it is that you have this mixing between the two types of angels, so to say. What do you do in terms of ensuring that your community levels up their sophistication levels, so to say, or that you all practice good angel investment, so to say? Good angel investment, there's two sides to it, right? One is, okay, you make good decisions in terms of who to back. That's kind of on the individual angel. But then there's how do you act towards founders? How do you, what are the terms that we kind of say is the right, this is fair, this is not fair. Do you do anything on that front?
We do. I mean, just like we are a platform of opportunity for investments, we're also a platform for education. One of our sessions each month is dedicated to members' education, so to speak, where we treat subjects like business angel etiquette, term sheets, what to expect to find in a term sheet, what's in there, what isn't. What happens after you invest in a startup? How do you support a startup? What is expected from you as an angel? How do you raise the next round? What does a proper seed look like? What does a proper Series A look like? So these are topics we discuss about. This being said, the performance of an angel group, I believe, over the long run should be measured by the sum of the reputations of the members. And I think we're in a continuous game, continuous game here, where things are constantly evolving. Obviously, as chairman of Tech Angels, I'm pushing everyone to be the best versions of themselves in relation to startups, in relation to other actors in the ecosystem. But it is individual. Each person's reputation is their responsibility.
So now I say something that's super, just prescriptive and not entirely fair, but the way I see a very successful angel is typically that they acknowledge very low percentage point ownership. It's very little control. It's very hasty decision-making processes. And it's likely in a syndicate, and it's likely at least, if not with a fund in this very first round, because sometimes an angel round is needed before you invite in a fund. It is definitely done kind of in close tandem with the VC ecosystem as well.
Yeah, of course.
That's how I see a very successful tech angel invest. But then you have
minus the syndication part. I would agree with you. Syndication is not mandatory, Andreas. When it's only a couple of folks.
Absolutely.
Like, let me give you the example of Pythagora, because you were asking me earlier. So Pythagora is there are 3-4, I think, angels in total invested in Pythagora, because Y Combinator, where they were accelerated, told the founders it's practical to have 3 or 4 angels involved in the company because they're more pragmatic than the funds, and they can help you with some hands-on stuff on some particular issues. You don't need a syndicate for 3 folks. That's like it's just not needed. So minus the syndication part, I would agree with you with all the points.
And I agree with that as well. But then you have on the other side, so this is how the perspective you come with if you're used to seeing startups operate and have seen the equity story of startups that are successful. But if you come from an SME angle or an accounting angle or whatever, and that come more from traditional industry, you tend to come with another playbook, which means control is important. I'd often hear things like, how do you control founders being a discussion point amongst angels, talking about de-risking or having as many things in the terms that allow you to protect yourself on the downside, all these things. And you also typically don't see 5% ownership split between the angels or 2%, but you see 15, 20, if not more. How do you try and, because I can only imagine that you have this group of investors as well. How do you try and get this group of investors aligned with, so to say, the right way of angel investing when they come into the club?
So actually, we have a lot less than you might think. I think we've talked publicly so much about the fact, not just me, but the previous leadership of Tech Angels. Publicly, we've talked so much about the fact that there's angel investment and there are other types of direct investments that are not, they're just not angel investments. It's something different.
Yeah.
We've talked so much about this that I believe there's less and less confusion, at least within the group. We don't have this within Tech Angels.
Okay.
I've within Tech Angels. So I've been a member for 3 years now. We've never had this conversation around the startup. Like one of the members going, "Oh, but we should get some control clauses into that." Like this conversation never happened. And I have a portfolio of 25 investments. More than half are done with fellow Tech Angels.
It's incredibly interesting and incredibly important, right? And I think that the organizations you're part of, you can look to more developed economies, so to say, where the national bands and so on are much bigger in terms of investment volume. But I really think that on this point, the Romanian tech ecosystem is incredibly sophisticated. And I think that it's a bit about, you haven't just had as much wealth, flown, from everywhere. Like, oh yeah, I'm a lawyer, so now I have tons of cash that I can just plow into. Like, there's been less of that, I imagine. And that's why, your angel ecosystem has really grown out of being tech people instead of being SME people and so on. I think it's incredibly important. I think you have a big role to play in the European angel organizations. And I'm saying stuff here that I'm sure that there's people that'll hate me for.
I blush sometimes when I hear some, in smaller economies, the angel organizations have been capable of investing hundreds of millions over the past 10 years. And we've barely done 45 million, right? I know it's not a lot. We do 3 million per year right now. That's sort of been the cadence in 2023. It seems it will be the cadence in 2024. It's not a lot. We know it's not a huge amount of money. And we acknowledge that we don't have the same firepower. But I also think that's fine. I think that it's better to do things organically and give things time to grow, as I'm sure we'll talk about later in the podcast. Time is also a factor. It's not just the amount of money. With time, I think we'll be able of doing more. We're not in any competition, Andreas. We're not in any competition with another country.
I was about to say that I think the main measure that anyone should use to judge an angel community's effectiveness or success by is longevity or constant deployment cadence of the angels that are members. And then, of course, also the returns coming back to the angels. But because that makes you focused on the right things. And the reason why I say this is if you look at many of the large, successful angel organizations across Europe, the average number of deals per angel is 2, 3, 4, which is, anyone who knows anything about angel investing would say, that's not a good portfolio mix.
That's not a portfolio, first of all.
Enough. Exactly. It's not even a portfolio. So that means that, this will only be unsuccessful. And then they do too many investments early at too large tickets. So they, get stuck. And then you get into this terrible flywheel, so to say, or doom loop. I really hope you understood that, I have all the respect in the world for what you're doing. And my point is that the other
Thank you.
larger ecosystem angel clubs should be asking you and listening to you. So that's what I'm saying. All right. So now let's listen to you. The vision of 10 unicorns in 10 years. That's what you're saying, what you're writing in your piece. Tell me a bit about it and why you think that this is actually something that you think is achievable.
It's not just a big, hairy, audacious goal. I think it's a necessity, Andreas. And this vision stems from a necessity. And think about just technology and the impact in the Central and Eastern European region, right? It's already one of the main vectors of growth for the economies in this region. The idea is, how do we as an angel group support the continued growth of technology in this part of the world? And how do we actually measure that? And this is where the kind of unicorns come in. It's important to have valuable companies in countries like Romania, like Hungary, Bulgaria, Croatia, Poland, wherever in this region. And if you open up the charts of top 10, top 20, whatever companies in these countries, you'll notice we have multi-billion-dollar companies, right? In the charts. They're just in energy, they're banks, they're energy companies, they're infrastructure and construction companies, they're retailers, which is all great. But the main contributor to economic growth in Romania, second or third, depending on the year, is IT&C. So why aren't the IT&C companies in there, or too few of them, right? So this is kind of regionally where the necessity for such a vision comes from. More broadly, since you brought in the European dimension to this, and you already pushed those buttons,
I'm waiting for it. Yes.
let me make a comment about European leadership more broadly, okay? We lack, my view as an European citizen, not just as an investor, is that we have no inspirational leadership at an European level. Zero inspirational leadership. Hence, we treat these leaders as administrators, as bureaucrats. And then we use the same reflex in the way we treat our national leaders in general. Right? What do I mean that we treat them as bureaucrats? When you don't have inspirational leadership, you count the pennies that you've allocated, right, to certain initiatives. So priority number one in our relationship with our leaders right now is to hold them accountable for the way public money is spent. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that. I definitely think we should do that. But there's a time and place for everything. And for us, for me at least, this constant way of dealing with our leadership shows that they bring absolutely no inspiration, no inspirational leadership into the equation, right? So it seems out of place where somebody like me, who's just the leader of a technical angel investment organization, comes and says something bold, right? That is not a symptom of me being crazy. That is a symptom of our European society not having inspirational leadership. I am not the deranged one in this equation. We're lacking inspirational leadership. So something that I do seems out of place, which is something that is completely, absolutely and completely normal, seems out of place. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I think you're so right. I think that it's a bit the nature of the beast because at least in the individual countries, we have what looks like direct democracy or representative democracy. We go in and vote, and thus everyone feels very close, and you really have to make your case as a person to get elected or as a leader to get elected. Whereas a lot of the people that are really making policy, especially here on the tech ecosystem side, are not very elected. And thus it becomes a machine, and the qualities that are that rise to the top are not necessarily leadership and public leadership and building momentum around things. Rather, it's about knowing how to navigate the machine or the beast or the octopus of
exactly
the European bureaucracy. What do you think is the path forward?
I think it comes down to individual responsibility. I'm a big believer in individual responsibility. My bit right now is to talk about this and to talk about this vision and to explain, what made me choose this path and articulate things in this way. I think we each have a responsibility to be the best version of ourselves. That's the path forward. I don't think and I don't see any other way other than individual responsibility and doing the best that we can individually. And on my end, I'm going to pay attention to try and identify for the future, those leaders who are capable of articulating a more inspirational message, right? That includes the tech community, that doesn't exclude the tech community, that doesn't push us towards the United States.
Yes. Well, there is a US teaching for all of us in terms of having inspirational leadership, because they do that better than anyone in Europe. We can then not like them or think they're a bit special, but it's definitely.
And funnily enough, they don't elect their commander-in-chief directly either.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's true. That was discussed a lot in this latest election cycle. Let me ask you then the role of the Romanian tech angels and the investor influence in all of this. Where do you see that?
I think it's a big role. I think the way I like to position this is I think we need to act as sort of catalyzers, or otherwise said, mind and door openers. I think mind openers because our mission is to show founders what's possible, I believe, and to support them in achieving that. And the perfect example of the impact of making such a statement, such a mission statement, and laying out such a vision is the following. After we published it, which is already, I think, 2 months back, as we were preparing the pitch sessions for the autumn, we had several startups telling us, we don't want to pitch next week or in 2 weeks because we're reworking our entire business plan and thinking around this business. Oh, really? How do you mean? Well, we're now thinking, how can we scale this to a $1 billion business? So this is coming from the startups. And I think that's very powerful. And this is one effect that we were trying to achieve with this. Yeah, we want to get founders thinking about this. Scale is important. Building a $1 billion company is not easy, but it's impossible if you don't set out to build a very large company. So that's one thing. And then door openers, because you know this very well, and it's pretty well showed on your podcast and in the UVC materials. Like one of the most important roles of an early stage investor is to open doors for subsequent rounds and for opportunities for great conversations further down the road, whether it's investment conversations or other types of conversations. So I think we need to act as mind openers and as door openers for our founders.
I always laugh at the critique of early stage investors that all they do is, they reply to WhatsApp if you write them, and then they otherwise just sit and wait for you to ask them to open doors to, And I'm like, well, isn't that what you want? Do you want them to do anything else than give you clients and funders in the future? Isn't that kind of what you would want from your early stage investor? And then strategic feedback when you ask for it, not someone who's going to sit on your lap and tell you where to go. Marius, I want to ask you, because in your article, you also mentioned your time at UiPath, and we should touch on that a little bit. And you're talking about the challenges of early stage growth and particularly overcoming the skepticism from global talent. I'd love to ask you, what were some of the key strategies that helped UiPath transform from just being a regional startup to being a globally recognized unicorn?
I mean, you're going to laugh, but it was just go fast, go bold, and go broad. I talk about how many people were rejecting our employment offers at UiPath in the early days, and a lot of people were rejecting. When I talk about this in recruitment terms, because that's a little bit what I did at UiPath, when I talk about top of the funnel and percentages, and the instinct is, if I say only 33% of employment offers are accepted, you need to increase that percentage. Or alternatively, you can increase the top of the funnel, which is what we did. You just need to go faster and broader than the competition. That's what you need to do in order to ensure success. So at the early stages, there are few risk takers in the world. By default, there are few risk takers in the world, right? So you need to go broad enough to touch as many risk takers as possible, and eventually you're going to have some critical mass, and a significant number of them will join your company. If you need 20, you'll find those 20 people. You just don't have to expect that you're going to recruit the 20 people out of 80 or 100 applicants as you would do in a corporation. You're going to recruit the 20 people out of 300 or 400, right? Which is a lot more to screen, and it's a huge effort for the startup because you don't have the resources to do that. But it's what if you're asking strategy, it's what we did.
Incredibly interesting. And we could dive all into that, but I think we should.
That could be a separate podcast, just the strategy for hiring,
Yeah, I do like that topic though. Maybe that's one we should bring.
And maybe also, Andreas, don't brood on rejection, because rejection will happen. Of course, take what you can from that, but don't brood on. Part of going fast is not brooding on not complaining about rejection. You need to go fast. This person rejected our offer. Okay, next. Let's talk to more people. Let's just talk to more people. Let's pick more brains. Let's see who's up for this.
You also advocate for, you call this healthy boldness in founders and investors. How did you cultivate this mindset at UiPath, and what can other founders and also tech investors learn from it?
Listen, this is to Daniel Dynas's credit. This is his. This is really his merit with the UiPath. I think he was so good at starting every conversation with culture and with elements of the culture and leading with culture that even to this day, if you wake me up at 3 a.m., I'm going to tell you that the 4 values of UiPath are being humble, bold, immersed, and fast. Like, you don't forget this stuff, right? Like, that's how good he was. And, this idea of boldness alongside the other ones is something he cultivated. But in what we're trying to do as an angel organization right now, and in what I'm trying to achieve by talking about this healthy boldness, is I'm trying to steer that conversation and to lead with culture, and trying to tell people that by default, and trying to tell founders by default, your job is the job of a risk taker. You're going to take a huge amount of risk by being a founder. You're going to risk personal well-being. You're going to risk a lot of stuff. Your job as a founder is constantly navigating risk, ambiguity, and risk. It's an extremely difficult job, and it's easy, as we have seen numerous times, it's easy to slip from the kind of attitude that you need to handle risk into kind of crazy attitudes, right? Like, I love the entire founder mode conversation, but let's acknowledge the fact that founder mode does not mean being completely reckless and irresponsible with other people's well-being, money, careers, so on and so forth. So boldness is amazing. We expect founders to be bold. We expect them to navigate difficult waters. We expect them to make tough decisions, tough calls, right? In a healthy way, in a way that doesn't kill the company. The reason why we as investors invest in those teams and in those founders is because we want to support them in creating amazing companies. That doesn't work if they kill the company, now does it? So healthy boldness. So my job right now is, to lead this conversation with these elements, and to explain them, and to kind of help them a little bit make sense of the noise. What is it like being a founder, and what is expected of me?
We always talk about the talent that we have across Europe, and I just want to ask one final question on this topic of recruiting talent. As an Eastern European company or founder, how do you increase your level of success, so to say, when it comes to recruiting talent from Western Europe?
Well, you need to build credibility, right? And I think, and legitimacy in the relationship with foreign talent. Think executives that you need to hire, think maybe engineers, sales folks, whatever. The issue that I see with Central and Eastern European founders is, and not just founders, people in general coming, and I include myself in this category, is that we tend generally to oscillate between two extremes, and there's no healthy middle ground. And these extremes are, on the one hand, it's something that's called protochronism, which is this impression that we're first in the world to have discovered something, to have done something, and kind of bragging around it. Like, nobody in the United States cares that a Romanian invented the fountain pen. Literally nobody. Like, their interest on the topic is zero. Like, at most, somebody's curiosity might be piqued, but most generally they'll regard you as a weirdo when you mention stuff like this. So just our inadequacy as Eastern Europeans, when we position ourselves like that in a conversation with a Japanese or a Korean or American or a Brazilian. So that's one extreme. The other extreme is being it's just too humble, unjustifiably so. Like, never taking any merit for anything. Oh, just, sitting in my seat, not saying anything. Like, that doesn't work either. We just need to find a middle way, being more practical, being more realistic, acknowledging the world we live in. Stop trying to impress people, and just, be ourselves, and build that credibility and that legitimacy that I was talking about in the very beginning by, just being who we are, not special, not special, just, humans. People like to do business with people. They don't care about nationality. When you go to South Korea, what they know at most about Romania or Hungary is that it's in Europe. For them, it might as well be next to France. It doesn't matter. is what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. It is completely irrelevant for them that you're Hungarian or Czech or Croatian or Bulgarian or Romanian. It's like you're from the European Union. That's it. Wine and cheese, brother. Wine and cheese. That's what they know about you when you go.
I really think you're right, especially because we are in tech, right? I've had a few conversations around this topic of European culture and culture in different countries, where I kind of had, it was around me trying to figure out how much do people feel perceived as their country of nationality or upbringing or whatever when they visit other tech ecosystems. I really got a great answer from one of the guys at Lunar Ventures, and what he said was, "Well, Andreas, no one sees me in our little world as anything but a deep tech investor. It is," and then what he said is also when he walks outside of tech, that's different. But I think that both when it comes to investors, but also the talent that you recruit, especially at the early stages, because it's people that have their the mindset of going into an early stage startup. We live digitally. We live in.
Yeah.
I think most of us think of ourselves first as you said, as humans, not as a Danish person or a Romanian person. And I think of myself almost more as a internet guy than I think of myself as a Danish guy. And I think you and I probably have more in common than me and all my neighbors here. I'm in a small town in Denmark, right?
But I think what's important for our listeners who are Eastern European is to understand this message. And I'll look in the camera as I say it to them. You cannot be offended by this stuff. You cannot be offended by the fact that somebody in the US doesn't know the difference between Budapest and Bucharest. I'm sorry, you cannot be offended by that. That's not what they're supposed to know. You're not hiring them for their knowledge of Budapest or Bucharest. You're hiring them because they know how to sell software as a service, presumably, right? So we have to stop being offended by this stuff. We're just making our lives a lot harder in this process of hiring great talent.
Completely agree. Okay, now I want to ask you a bit about then growing the Romanian Tech Angels into a catalyst for the all of CE. Maybe let's start with your goals, where you were in the beginning, where you started, and where you are now. What are the goals of Tech Angels Romania today?
I think the comparison is a little bit unfair. Like if we think about the founding years, as I said in the very beginning, we're talking, let's not talk Romania. Let's talk France, 2013. You probably had a handful of companies that were in the hundreds of millions, right? And they didn't know what a unicorn looked like, even if you showed them the drawing. So, a lot of things have evolved in Europe over the past 11 years. I think we've been privileged as Tech Angels because the group has been around for this long, from very early on when we had the first few small exits back in 2014, 15, 16, then going through kind of the UiPath journey and this building of the confidence that this can be achieved. And, it is under the leadership of Dan Călugăreanu and Mălin Ștefănescu that the group started to increase in size, to attract more members, to get more people excited and interested about technology, about investing in technology, about giving back, reinvesting some of the stuff that they made as co-founders or executives in a tech company. But, if I think about 11 and a half years ago, I almost burst with laughter. It's too different, even not just technology, Romania as a country. You've been here, Andreas. I mean, I don't know if you've been here in 2012 or 13, but I've been here for a while. So I can tell you, it's a fundamentally different place. I would refer more to what we're trying to achieve right now and why we laid out this vision of the creation of 10 unicorns in the next 10 years. I think we need to be more focused on value creation, on the understanding of investment cycles. We're in the beginning of a new investment cycle with several venture capital firms having just raised their second fund and a couple of others coming up next with their first fund. So this new vintage, as we call it in the venture capital world. And my intention is for Tech Angels to align itself to what's going on in Romania, in Hungary, Bulgaria, Croatia, Slovenia. So these countries, and to work together really well with the venture capital firms, with the other investment organizations, and be part of the story, and repeat the messaging that makes sense for the founders and for the other investors, and help and contribute and grow companies, and yes, create meaningful exits so that people can go invest, but get the right people engaged, get the right people in front of the right founders, create those opportunities to build amazing companies together with capital, with knowledge, with amazing teams. So that's what I see. That's what I feel we have to do. Not that we haven't tried for the past 11 years, but we're in a different place right now. I think we're perfectly positioned as a group of investors to contribute to that. And listen, I believe we have the legitimacy. We definitely have the friendship, I think, with the other players, not just in Romania, but again in countries around us. I travel extensively to Sofia, to Budapest, to Slovenia, to Croatia whenever I can, and I've never been regarded as weird or out of place for being interested in technology companies across this entire region. On the contrary, I think people are actually more than happy to collaborate with angels from other countries with other kinds of experiences. But the interest has to be mutual, right? Like, I get asked, why don't you invest in Portugal? Like, I don't invest in Portugal. It's a little bit far for me. It's a bit out of reach for me, and I can't be everywhere. But where there is a mutual interest, right? Like, founders in Southeastern Europe care about the stories that we've been able to generate recently, and let's say Romania, Bulgaria, right? We care about each other's stories. We want to learn from each other. So there is mutual interest. Founders care, I care, then we can co-invest. Why don't I invest in Denmark? I mean, I think you've got a critical mass of success stories and investors and great founders that you don't necessarily need, somebody from Budapest or Zagreb or Bucharest to come in there or if they do, they have to be genuinely interested in Denmark, right? So this is how I regard this, and how our role, I think, has evolved, not just as a group, but also as individuals, as members of the group.
When we look at this global angle, you said it earlier, and I didn't ask about it, but you have a diaspora that's part of the community as well. That is not something I see too often either. When it comes to the more formalized networks, they tend to be quite local, so to say, or at least national. I'd love to ask you both in terms of membership recruiting, how come you have this angle to you? And then also another question on the globalization or internationalization part. Your deal flow, is that purely Romanian, or is that actually from all of south of Budapest and east of Vienna?
So I'll answer the second question first. The deal flow is not only Romanian, but we do give priority to the Romanian founders when their startups are upvoted in the system, Romanian, Moldavian especially. And when I say Romanian, I mean they can be Romanians from the diaspora, not necessarily Romanian founded companies. So a lot of times we will see startups created in the United Kingdom, in the United States, that have one Romanian or a co-founder of Romanian origin. This happens more and more often. Somebody who has Romanian parents who have moved to the US like 40 years ago, and it's just this remote connection that they have to Romania. Now, to the subject of the diaspora, this is a bit of a complex topic for me, and it's one topic where I need to get better at this. I mean, I can't say we don't have an active strategy of attracting people from the diaspora, because we do. Our diaspora members are our most fiery advocates, and I think that counts for something. This being said, the Romanian relationship with the diaspora is a complicated one. Historically, it's a complicated one. It's not a straightforward one. And I don't have the expectation, and I'm not naive to think that somebody should just take an interest because their parents were born here, or because they were born here and moved out of the country when they were two. I'm not naive to think that. A lot of people did not leave Romania because 99% of the people who left Romania, they didn't leave Romania because it was amazing. It was a great country with wonderful opportunities, but they just thought, the UK or the US or Spain or whatever is, marginally better, and I'll go there. No, they left because Romania was in a difficult situation. They could not support their families, maybe. Or more tragically, and unfortunately, they got kicked out of the country. during communist times, because they were, they were not agreeing with the regime. They were not agreeing with the system. It didn't sit well with them. You can't ask people by default when you meet and greet them to forgive and forget. Like, that's not how it works, especially when people, again, didn't leave. This is not, again, sorry to bring again the French into question, but
No, that's good.
I know look at the country and the culture a little bit. So this is not the French moving to London because they think it's interesting, right? Like, the French don't have a shitty life in Paris or Lyon. That's why they move to London. They move for the intellectual adventure. They move because they want to experience a different culture. It's lovely. And I'm not saying there aren't Romanians who've done that. I myself did that back when I was an engineer. I worked and I studied for a while in France, and I loved that experience. But then I decided to come back because my life as an engineer was not very bad. You can live a decent life in Romania. But for 99% of the people, the 4 million plus people who left Romania, that was not the experience. They left because it was tricky. So how do I build back trust, and how do I build back a relationship with people where I show them that it is in their interest to contribute to the Romanian tech ecosystem? I don't have all the answers to that question. It's something that I'm working on. It's something that we as an organization are working on. A lot of times the answers just come serendipitously, like, some person is married to a Romanian and somehow got to experience How to Web as an event, right? People who experience How to Web, they are dazzled by the quality of the production. Like, I didn't know this could be done in Bucharest. Like, yes, this can be done in Bucharest. It's an amazing event. I'm sure you agree because you keep coming every year, so you must like it.
I actually think it's no, I don't even know if I would put it like that. It's obviously easier to get people from all the big funds and so on come to London or whatever when you do something there. But both the production value of the event and the venue and How to Web is incredible. And then as an investor, when you come there, you're taken so well care of. And I'm the lobby in the hotel where everyone is staying, like, there's so much energy there. The whole restaurant in the morning is just filled. You almost want to stay there all day long. It's so incredible. And so I really think that the three maybe biggest things that I think about when I think about How to Web is, one, the production value of the event. Like, there's no better venue than How to Webs. It's incredible. Then the people that come on the investor side, both from the region, but also to an increasing extent, even with Creatopy coming now for 2 years in a row and doubling down. Seed Camp is always there.
Like, Dawn Capital is always there.
Yeah, incredible, right? Andre always shows up from Credo. So beautiful, right? And then the side events of How to Web is incredible as well. And that's a funny thing to put, I think, a little bit. But I do think that the party scene around How to Web is quite significant compared to other conferences. I think it's actually second to none. Everyone's there. They're staying up long. I think it's also because it's the last summer event, kind of like many of us coming from the Nordics or the more northern parts of Europe, we've kind of not seen summer for 15 days, 20, 30 days by that time. And then when you come there, it's just sun is shining, 25 degrees.
Yeah.
You can find it wear just a t-shirt.
Last chance to experience that in the...
Exactly. It's the last summer party.
But to create a bit of contrast, maybe, Andreas, to what I was saying earlier about, the box we're in as investors, as Tech Angels, looking east of Vienna, south of Budapest. What I love about How to Web is that you've got people coming from west of Vienna, north of Budapest, right?
Yeah,
increasingly.
Absolutely.
Think, from like investors, top investors, like starting from like 3VC in Vienna and going up to like Karma Ventures in the Baltics and the Nordic funds that you were mentioning, all the way into the UK, obviously with a number of UK funds that are coming. And these people are telling us and giving us the confidence that, we're building something healthy, which in turn gives me the confidence to go back to the diaspora or to talk to people in the diaspora and say, hey, I'm not the only one saying we might be onto something here. Talk to investors, talk to people in whose funds you would normally invest in as an LP and ask them why are they coming to Romania, right? I might be biased, obviously, because I'm here and I'm a strong believer in what can be built here. But why is Creandum, to your point, why is 3VC, why is Andre from Credo constantly in here, right? Why are these folks here? What's their reasoning for it? Because it's not just the weather. To be fair, the weather is amazing.
It's also important to say that these funds do not show up with their second guys or third guys or fifth guys. It's Staffan from Creandum. Like, it's not, they're really doing a push here. I cannot overstate how important I think that it is to recognize that this is the event you want to go to if you want to understand Eastern Europe, and especially Southern Eastern Europe, of course. Okay, so now I want to ask you one final question, or two actually. The first one is, when we're thinking about all of this, what do you think is the immediate action that VCs and LPs should take to support the 10 unicorn vision that you're describing and foster the tech mafia culture in Romania?
Listen, let's just keep doing what we're doing, Andreas. I think even at How to Web, what I can acknowledge is that not everyone is interested in this with the same intensity at the same time, right? And I think that would be an unrealistic expectation. But I've received a lot of help, and we as Tech Angels have received a lot of help from around us. And I just like to thank everyone who has come back and asked us, how can we help? Let's talk about this. This is value creation for the entire region. It's not about Romania. Again, we happen to be an organization that started in Bucharest, but we're trying to be more and more active across the region. I think what we can do right now, what VCs, LPs can do, is just talk about this and explain or re-explain why it's important. Again, it's important for long-term value creation in our economies, which will generate more economic inclusion, will generate more political inclusion, which hopefully over generations will create the prosperity and the kind of strong democracy that we all wish for. But we can't get there unless we acknowledge the importance of technology and the role it plays in our economic growth. We can't continue to treat technology as an aberration on the economic radar of countries in this region, if that makes sense. And the way to do that, and the way to get technology out of the sort of imposed tribalism state it is in right now, is to talk about it as an engine of economic growth. And the way to do that is to use numbers that people understand. Unicorn is the technological term, but billion-dollar company is something that people understand and want to hear more about.
I think you're so right, Marius. I want to close it here and say thank you so much for coming on the podcast to talk about this vision of 10 unicorn companies over the next 10 years. I think everything you've said, should be heard from many in the tech ecosystem. Hopefully we had a lot of angels listening, responsible people or people responsible from the angel communities that are being built across Europe, because I think there's a lot to learn. Marius, I'm sure they can reach out to you as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'm here for questions at any time.
Incredible. Marius, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Andreas. It was a pleasure.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.